This is my own house, which is in Carrington, New South Wales, and I like collages of pictures. It makes it real. It's the longest monitored house possibly in the world for rainwater harvesting and sustainability. It's been measured for everything that moves in this house. It's been measured for more than 20 years, including the rest of my family, which has annoyed them a little bit. You know, when did you flush the toilet and so on. However, it has taught us a lot. It's showed us some new things we didn't understand, because we always learn new things, but also showed us the many myths about sustainability that impact on people. And in many areas, like rainwater harvesting, there are many myths that people act on, and it's dismissed some of those. This unusual house, because it's run by solar batteries and solar panels, it's got a low energy e-pump supplied by Mike. It's got a 5,000 litre slimline tank. It's a small inner city property like that of Chris Walsh's I showed on the previous slide. The conventional wisdom 20 years ago when I put it in was, oh, you can't do rainwater harvesting, or a kitchen garden for that matter, or have effective solar panels on a small inner city property. It can't work. Well, this is one of the smallest and it works quite well. But I want to focus here on how the runoff for every event has been reduced from this small property. So the graph here is a bit unusual. So the actual runoff from the property, BAU runoff is what would have happened on the vertical axis, and runoff on the bottom axis is what has happened. The red vertical line is what has happened, and the blue dots is what would have happened as we've measured if the rainwater tank wasn't there and the kitchen garden wasn't there, and so on. As you can see there's on all rain events, there's dramatic changes of stormwater runoff from this property. On average, there's a 55% reduction in stormwater runoff volumes. Some of my roof and my front veranda and yard discharges directly to the drainage system, so that's not managed by the rainwater tank. The most contested chestnut in rainwater harvesting and stormwater management is the tank's always going to be full when it rains, therefore there's no benefit. This graph now I've just shown you with the green triangles on there shows the available storage in the rainwater tank prior to each rain event we've monitored over that very long time. So on average in that 5,000 litre storage, there's more than 2,000 litres available to store stormwater before a rain event. So the tank is hardly ever full, if ever, prior to a rain event. And quite ironically, it's always nearly empty prior to the large rain events, because they tend to happen in summer during thunderstorm periods, and that's the large rain events intense rain events create the flood risks. So it's sort of dismissing a bit of conventional wisdom here. The tank is mostly got storage available prior to a rain event, which adds to stormwater management. But if you look at the first graph I showed you, the whole property is storing stormwater that's working with the rainwater tank. So it's the kitchen garden takes the rainwater overflows before it goes to the street. So it's actually producing more runoff volume changes. So the reliability of having, in my property in Newcastle, and having storage in the tank, storage available in the tank to stop stormwater runoff, or some of it, is more than 82%. So it's very reliable. Across the entire country, we've done research and taken measurements, and I'm showing some graphs here on this slide of, just suppose you have a rainwater storage between 1 and 10,000 litres, 1 and 10 kilolitres, and you use rainwater consistently for toilet and laundry uses as well as outdoor, you can actually count 50 to 70% of your tank volume as a contribution to what engineers called onsite detention. So it's saying that because infrastructure is designed for probabilities, not for absolutes or averages. So is there going to be storage available in your rainwater tank if you use it for indoor uses prior to the event that the engineers used to design the stormwater pipes in your street, for example, or the detention basin at the bottom of your suburb? And that's how it's done. So the two graphs I'm showing here, the lower one is recurrence interval, which is ARI in years, 1 in so many year events, versus peak discharge, which is a metric engineers use to design pipes, for example, and pumps. And we can see here that the red line in that lower graph is what would happen in the property if there was no rainwater tank. The blue dotted line is the council standard, what they'd like to manage the runoff back to, which is what they perceive nature would have delivered in these types of events. The green line is if there was a 3 kilolitre rainwater tanks. And then there's the purple line, which is even lower, better performance, is 5 kilolitre rainwater tanks. And the next line down, it's the best performance, is 2 3 kilolitre rainwater tanks used at that property. As you can see, based on the way engineers design infrastructure, the rainwater harvesting system has produced the benefits when it's needed for the right design criteria, and it's better than not having them by a long way. The top graph on that slide, so the first graph was from Melbourne, the top graph on that slide is the available storage in your rainwater tank, used for indoor and outdoor uses. This was for a 3,000 litre tank prior to storm events used to design infrastructure again. So in that local government area, which was Geelong, they designed their stormwater infrastructure in the street for 10-year recurrence interval events. We now call it AEP. If you're an engineer, it used to be called ARI. As you can see, if you look at that graph and you go up to the blue line, you can see that for that particular type of event that the stormwater drainage system is designed for, that tank's going to have 2.1 cubic metres of storage available in it prior to rain events. So it'll create for each house that benefit. For a 100-year event, which is what the road surfaces are designed for to convey, not the pipes, which is the big event, big flood event people are really worried about, it's going to have about 2.7 cubic metres available, even though the tank is only 3,000 litres in this graph. And that's because that large event is a large summer thunderstorm that comes along when the tank is almost empty because it's dry.